everyone? It's Wacky Automotive here to present you with What If Issei Became Alastor Part 4. Let's go ahead and get into it. Currently in the ORC room, Rias and the rest of the ORC are starting to think about what they can do about their latest problem, the radio demon. After all, if he's left unchecked, he might just cause a havoc. He might just cause disaster all around her territory and Sonia's. Immediately when she called Sir Zex a while ago, all that Sir Zex said was, flashback. Currently, it's been a few minutes after Issei's left. Rias has used the magic circle to call Sir Zex. POV change. Sir Zex is currently in the underworld, literally going through piles and piles of paperwork on his desk. As if his problems weren't enough, he got a call from his little sister. Immediately, he answered the call, wondering what she could want right now. He loved his sister, but he's way too busy to spend time with her right now. Immediately when he answered, he heard a panic voice, starting to say stuff at a too quick of a pace for him to keep up with, until he told her to take a deep breath. Immediately she did such, and then he said, now say it very slowly about what the problem is. As she immediately said, the problem is the radio demons in the territory, and I don't know what to do. She even offered me a deal. Immediately, Sir Zex froze. He started to have flashbacks of when he met the radio demon in the Great War, and how much of a catastrophe he did just by himself. He almost erased the entire devil race, the angels and the fallen angels, to the point to where all of them had to retire from the war, and they even had to make a little quick treaty, not to interfere with any other race, just so that they could survive. If they continued, they just drive themselves to even quicker extinction. They don't even know why Alastor stopped. He didn't really agree to anything. All he did was back off for a little bit. He immediately, Sir Zex started to think about what he could want, immediately telling Rias a few words that made Rias quite angry. Immediately, he said, Rias, I want you and your barrage back in the underworld, and don't go back to the human world. It's not safe there. After all, if he's there, nowhere is safe. Heck, hell's not as safe, but it's safer than the mortal world, where he could do anything and everything, and no one will be able to stop him. Immediately when this is said, Rias says, do you want me to abandon my territory? As immediately Sir Zex says, it's either your territory or your life. As he says this, Rias feels her heart start to beat even faster as she says, no, I'm not going to abandon my territory. I'll talk to you later. As she hangs up, immediately the flashback starts to end as Sir Zex started to think, we gotta put back up those posters. As posters were spread all across the underworld saying, beware, he is back, showing Alastor's face, or in this instance, Alastor previously before he became Issei. Present time. Currently, Rias is speaking to her barrage about what to do. They already informed Sonia. Sonia didn't back down either, even though Leviathan really wanted her to the point where she ended up saying that she'll appear at school, that she'll even protect her, completely abandoning her while her actual responsibilities at this Leviathan, making, well, Rias feel a little bit envious on this, well, if she wasn't absolutely obsessed with Sonia, as she started to think this, and started to think about more precautions of what to do. She definitely can't make him a member of her barrage. That would never work. After all, he's a purebred demon, or at least that's what she thinks. Which technically he is, and technically he isn't. You'll find out more later on. Immediately, she thinks and definitely can't make a deal with him. After all, anyone that makes a deal with him basically leads himself to ruin. At least that's what the rumors say. Immediately thinking about more things, what to do. Can't really unite all the devils in Kyo and try to attack him, considering he just basically eradicate all of them in a second. They're completely powerless in this situation, is what she thinks in her mind. Speaking of powerless, all of a sudden, Graphia appears in the room and immediately starts to say a few words which makes Rias furious. Absolutely furious, and fearing her future. Graphia immediately says, Rias, I have some bad news. As Rias says, is it worse than the radio demon being here? As soon as those words were said, Graphia stopped, was completely in shock, started to tremble, started to shake violently. As Rias saw this, she was curious about how she was so terrified of him. She knows about the legends, but what did he do to Graphia? Immediately, she started to have tears well up in her eyes and said, the radio demon's here, as she started to mutter. Immediately looking around in the room, being quite scared, even hiding behind the couches, in some type of giddy attempt to get away from the radio demon's piercing eyes. As she started to think about where he could be, she can't sense him. As she gets up and tries to compose herself, still shaking, she says, no, but that's a lot worse. As she said, then what's the bad news? Immediately, Graphia was about to say something until immediately a magic circle appears on the ground, and it has the phoenix symbol. And much Rias's very, very plain disgust of him being here, he appears out of the magic circle with flames covering him. And he looks quite different. Rias looks at him and sees that he's changed quite a lot. His physique is a lot more muscular. You could see his muscles bulging out of his apparel. You could see his face being more sharp and defined. And his eyes showed a lot more power, a lot more strength, and a little bit more wisdom. Just a little bit, not enough to fix that dim-witted bird brain of his, to realize that he made a mistake making such a deal. But hey, he didn't really have any options. As he looked towards Rias and said, Rias, why don't you go ahead and sit on the couch with me? As he sits towards the couch, immediately Rias refused to, and was about to turn away towards Graphia to ask a question, until all of a sudden, she closed her eyes for a mere instant, and then sees that her position's changed. She's currently on the couch, on Riser's knee, sitting down on Riser's knee, as Riser said, oh, Rias, quite the aggressive approach I see. As immediately Rias looked towards him, and saw that she was sitting directly on his leg, near his lap, immediately trying to get up, and walks towards Graphia, immediately to ask about the situation. But as soon as she got up and tried to walk away, Graphia couldn't even tell what was happening. She saw Rias in one position, but immediately appeared near Riser. She couldn't really see that the first time, until all of a sudden she walked towards Graphia about to ask a question, until when she blinked, she appeared right back in Riser's, at Riser's knee, sitting down on Riser's knee, getting even closer towards his lap. Immediately, he said, oh, you can't wait till the wedding, he says with a devious smile, which makes everyone in the room disgusted. Kiba glares at him, so does Akano and Konako. They don't like the idea of her being married to a pompous ass. As Rias looked towards him and merely shoved him off, and Graphia, while also being disgusted, could barely see him walk up towards her in such a fast motion that no one could tell, pick her up, and quickly appear back towards the couch and lay her directly on his knee, positioning it to where she's sitting on his knee, very close to his lap, as if she was doing it herself. Immediately, Rias pushed him away and sat directly on the opposite side of the couch. As Riser said, "Oh, why be like that, darling?" he says. As she looked towards Grafia and says, "I thought the arranged marriage was a few months away. Why is he here? Isn't he banned from being in the mortal world?" While she says, "Yes, he is, but he's only came to inform you, same as me. The wedding's been altered. The date is a week from now." Immediately, Reese's eyes and pupils start to dilate, going very small. Felt like her world was in shock. Immediately, she started to tremble, thinking about how powerless she is in the situation if that happens. She immediately looked at Grafia and said, "This is just a joke, right?" Hoping that that would just be a joke. But no, it wasn't. Her eyes said everything, and she said, "I'm sorry, but it isn't." As Riser starts to close in up on her and says, "Don't worry, I'll make sure that you live a life of luxury," as he started caressing her face very creepily, as Kiba immediately had enough of this and was about to pull out his blade. As soon as he formed his blade with Sword Rebirth, he noticed the blade immediately shattered into pieces, and he noticed a painful sensation in his gut. He looked downward to see that there is an apparent hole in his gut, and immediately noticed it was burning and searing to where it was seared shut, and he fell to the ground in immense pain and collapsed. As everyone saw this, no one saw the attack but Grafia, who was in shock about how strong he's gotten. She never knew he was so strong. He's almost at her level, way quicker than her, but her battle experience will make her go on top. Immediately, she started to think about how strong that he was compared to Sir Zex. Trying to sense his aura, any of his demonic aura, only sensing none of it, which made her quite questioning towards the Phoenix. Immediately she said to Reus, "Well, the Phoenix family has ended up saying that they wanted to accelerate the date, specifically Riser Phoenix. Not to mention the fact they were backed up by the Devil Kings. Immediately saying that this is for the entire Devil race." As that was said, immediately Rhea said, "If it's for the Devil race, then why does it have to be me? Why can't the Devil Kings do it if they like him so much?" As Grafia says, "You know it doesn't work like that. After all," after Riser started to say this and said, "After all," he put his hands directly under Rhea's chin, putting her chin upwards to where she's facing his eyes. "I want to be most beautifulest, and that was you, luckily, Reus." Immediately when he said this, Reus felt a disgust in her very fiber of her being. She immediately tried to slap Riser's hand away, which she successfully did, and Riser immediately backed off and started to chuckle and says, "I like when they play aggressive." As Reus was quite literally off-put by Riser, and immediately said to Grafia, "I refuse. I will not do this wedding." As immediately Grafia said, "We figured that you would do. Sir Zex figured you would say this." So he proposed a rating game. If you win, you're free from the arranged marriage. If he wins, he's free to continue the arranged marriage. Immediately, she looked towards Riser and said, "But Riser has to agree." Unfortunately, the Devil Kings persisted on this, as Reus knew that Riser would not agree to this. But to her shock, Riser just looked towards her and said, "Oh, I agree. After all, what's one spout before our wedding?" he says before having a condescending smile. Immediately, that smile sent shivers down everyone's spine, as Reus looked towards him and said, "Why would you agree to such a thing?" And immediately, Riser says, "Because I already know the outcome." He says that before disappearing, having a cocky smirk the entire time. As he disappeared, as he was about to disappear, he said, "But I might as well show you a little fraction of my power." As he showed a little bit of his aura, it caused everyone to fall to the ground. Konako and Akano were having trouble breathing. Rias was literally falling to the ground trying to pick herself up, and Gravia was having a little bit trouble breathing, but that was just all. It was only a little trouble, not that much. Immediately, as he showed a little bit of power, it disappeared, and he disappeared with it. As he disappeared, he reappeared back into his room, thinking everything going according to my plan, as he laid back into his bed and fell asleep. Immediately, as Rias was left in a panicking state, wondering how they can even take him on. They have a week until the wedding where they can actually train. Immediately thinking about taking her barrage and training them, but then remembering back to the little show of power that he showed, and knowing that no matter what amount of training that they do, it's completely useless against that amount of power. Then she thought about one man that can get her out of this situation, one man she's dreading to ask for help. As she storms out of the room, and everyone else is trying to stop her, all the barrages, except for Grafia, who doesn't know what she's doing, until she pulls Konako close to her and says, "What is she going? Where is she going?" As she says, "I think I know. He might be going to the radio demon to ask for help." Immediately, this caused alarms to ring in her head, as she immediately sent a message towards Surzex, and they all tried to find where Rias went. They searched the entire school, but she was already long gone. She appeared towards a house, and immediately knocked on the door, and was met with the door opening, and a quite sinister smile was on the other end of the door, as he said, "Oh, you came to me. They all usually come to me when they need something. So, what do you truly need?" he says, as he stares into Rias's eyes, his irises in his eyes glowing a brighter red. And that's where What If Issei Became Alastor Part 4 ends. I hope you all enjoy.